We are killing our brains with sugar. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Minke. This is Minke Wellness. And in our wellness program, we have lifestyle changes. And one of the big lifestyle changes we're finishing up for this quarter is get rid of refined sugar. So let's talk about what sugar is and isn't. What do we mean by refined sugar? And what is its effect on the brain? And I'm telling you, it's a poison. So this falls in, we have a wellness strategy: stop poisoning the nervous system, flood the nervous system with nutrients, and manage our stress with regard to the nervous system. And this definitely falls in the category of, well, you could say, well, but the brain needs sugar, so we need to flood the brain with sugar. Yeah, well, that the word flood here goes a little extreme. It's a little too much on the sugar category. Sugar, refined, clear, sugar, high glycemic index sugar is a poison to the brain. Okay, so here's what happens. When we eat refined sugar, first of all, back up. Nature does not produce refined sugar. By definition, we have to refine it, okay? So even when you look at your major sugar sources, sugar cane, if you were to chew on sugar cane, it's going to be hard for you to get a ton of sugar in there. You've got this very fibrous material. You have to chew on it. So we have to boil it. We pound it and we boil it and we get the syrup out. Now, even if we just left it there and said, okay, we have now refined it. We've taken out the fiber. We still have a syrup that's darker. It tastes like dirt and earthy because it's got all these minerals in it. The minerals are the things that keep the body balanced when it takes in the sugar. Well, you start stripping it out of all of those other things, and you end up with something that is a poison, okay? So even honey, you say, well, what about honey? Honey has a lot of really good stuff in it until we boil it and strip it out, and then it ends up just being sugar. So all these things that we do to it to strip out all the nutrients, to make it more refined, is what creates this as a poison. Nature doesn't make these. Nature has it all bundled in such a way that it's a little bit harder to get, and always has minerals and other things in it that keeps it balanced. Now, balanced in what way? Mainly we're talking about blood sugar. And so here's what happens. We eat... if we eat refined sugar, that sugar, and that could be fructose, glucose, any of the simple sugars, can run into the bloodstream right away and cause the blood sugar to go up. When the blood sugar goes up, the pancreas releases insulin, and the insulin runs into the blood, and that insulin is a hormone that runs around the entire body and tells all the cells that have insulin receptors, okay, so the cell has to have an insulin receptor on the outside of the cell, and it attaches to that receptor, and it tells the cell, open up your sugar channels and pull sugar in, right? And so we're pulling sugar into the cell from the bloodstream, so that it goes back and reduces the blood sugar. Here's the thing. There are 3 cell types that have more sugar receptors, more insulin receptors, I should say, more insulin receptors than others. That is the fat cells, the brain, and cancer cells. So if you want to feed cancer, just go ahead and just keep goosing that sugar response, that insulin response, and you're going to make sure that you really flood the cancer with all this sugar energy. Now, sugar is energy, so we like sugar. The reason we're addicted to sugar, the reason we throw it into our food supply, the reason we refine it is so that we can get a buzz. So what happens is the brain is already geared to receive sugar. It eats more sugar than any other organ. And so the whole system is designed to take any little simple sugar that is there in the food and send it immediately to the brain. That's a good thing. That activates the brain. It gets the human animal part to say, oh, I like that. Get more of that, right? That's an energy source. We've just taken it to the industrial extreme, okay? All things in moderation. In this case, we've gone way overboard. So now what we have is massive amounts of sugar going in, huge insulin spikes, and the brain is getting flooded with sugar. And in this case, we're talking flood, the pouring in. Now this sugar throws off the water balance and actually creates osmotic stress in the brain, but it can't help it. The system it doesn't have any way of regulating it and say, well, oh, wait a minute, the brain has got too much. So that's an addiction because that amount of sugar gets the brain cranked up. The problem is, do we need that energy? Does the brain need that energy right now? And a lot of times it doesn't. So it has to do something with this energy, which ramps it up, and we end up with that sugar buzz, okay? People are calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Type 3 diabetes, which is to say, we're after years and years and years of pounding the brain with all this excess sugar, causing it to ramp up. Now, what happens when a cell gets sugar? It's going to feed into the energy system, into the mitochondrial system, and it's going to break down that sugar and turn it into energy, ATP. And that's regardless of whether it needs it or not. Now, that is done in the mitochondria. And if you remember when the muscle, when we talked about mitochondria a lot in the musculoskeletal system, mitochondria produce a lot of free radicals. The nervous system, the central nervous system, is really low in antioxidants, and so it cannot protect itself from free radicals in the same way that the rest of the body does. This is a problem. So we actually end up oxidizing our brains when we eat too much sugar and pound it, and this is over time. We need to control this. We need to really pay attention and get rid of this refined sugar. In general, what I'm really saying is, I don't really care if you get rid of refined sugar or not. You've got to keep your glycemic index low, which is to say, glycemic index is how much and how fast does sugar run into the bloodstream to create an insulin spike. You want to eat in your diet, I don't care what diet you eat really, but you want to eat a diet that does not overstimulate or have a single spike of insulin. We want to keep that low. There's whole reasons for that I've talked about already, but basically we've got two metabolic systems. We've got the insulin-based system and the non-insulin-based system. The non-insulin-based system is what they call ketogenic, and that was where you're breaking down fat and sometimes protein. If you break down protein, you get too many amino, because the amino acid, the amino part gets broken off, and now we've got ammonia that builds up, and we have to get rid of that in the form of urea, or it builds up in the system. So we really don't want to break down protein for energy. We want to break down fat for energy. When we break down fat, it clips off the little pyruvic acid parts, and we end up feeding the Krebs cycle, feeding into the energy system without any insulin. Now, when you do that, you actually stimulate growth hormone production and healing of the body. When you stimulate the insulin system, especially if it's overstimulated, you shut down growth hormone and you reduce the healing of the body. So we definitely want energy, and we want to be able to burn fat as energy. And so this is where this new understanding and probably a bit of a craze in ketogenic diets. And ketogenic is great. We want to burn fat. But I'm not sure that people who are eating a ton of protein as part of this diet is the answer. I would still keep your protein on a reasonable amount and eat more fat and reduce the carbs. So I would be on a high-fat diet as opposed to, now if your liver can't take it, your gallbladder's all clogged up, and your liver's not used to that, then you're going to stress out your liver, et cetera, et cetera. So before engaging in a heavy ketogenic fat-burning diet or high-fat diet, I would definitely look to making sure your liver is clear. Okay, so that's all aspects of this whole issue of blood sugar and glycemic index, but the effects on the brain are very clear. We cannot continue to goose the brain with sugar, pour sugar into the brain and expect the brain to function long term. So it is much, much better for us to keep that balanced. So this is our focus, huge focus for getting, if you haven't done this for the last 2 months, get on this, get rid of your refined sugar, eat more fiber. You try to eat 40 to 60 grams of fiber a day at least. When you look at your food supply, here's how the real quick thing on this. If you look at your label, your protein plus fiber should be more than your refined sugars. When it says sugars, it means refined sugars. I'm not talking carbohydrates. You can almost, not quite, but you can almost ignore on this formula I'm talking about. You can ignore the carbohydrate amount. If you look at the fiber and the protein and you add that together, it's got to be more than the sugar. So if you look at a cereal, breakfast cereal, and it has 4 grams of fiber and 4 grams of protein, but 12 grams of sugar, that's not adding up. On the other hand, you got one of those high fiber cereals that have 8 or 10 grams of fiber, and it's usually high fiber goes with high protein, so you got 5 grams of protein. Now we've got 13. Add those together with 13, and you've only got 4 grams of sugar. That's a great cereal. The problem is if you throw in sugared up milk or sugared up soy milk or almond milk or coconut milk, and you look at your sugar content on those, and you've got 12 grams of sugar running in there, we've just thrown off the whole ratio. So what I'm saying is, if you look at your ratios, try to get your fiber plus protein more than your sugar for your meals, and you're going to be in a much better place. I'm not saying that's an absolute. I'm just saying it's a general guideline way to think about it. And so you look at your protein bars and your things like that you like to eat. You might be getting 8 grams of protein, but if you're getting 20 grams of sugar with that, it's throwing the system off. So that's how I look at that. Okay, so general rule of thumb there: take care of your brain. Now, one thing that you can do if you want to help your brain is to go back and breathe into your pancreas. I've got a video. I'll put the link in the bottom. I did a video on working on your blood sugar. So go back and learn how to manage your blood sugar through breath. There are essential oil supplements that are designed. That have been shown to be supportive of the pancreas, like dill oil. Those coriander and dill. So those are possibilities too in the supplement category. Supplements in general, you need chromium as a mineral supplement. Then there are also some aspects of stevia and some other things that help to actually work with the blood sugar system or support the pancreas. Okay, so there's ways that we can support ourselves, but that's after the fact. That's just general support. You gotta not eat the sugar in the first place. That is critical. You can't eat the sugar and then take a medication or a supplement and expect that to be solving the problem. It's not gonna work. You've got to stop eating the sugar. There's a lot of ways to do that. Maybe we should just have one whole video on transition diets and all the rest of that stuff. Okay, happy wellness, one day at a time. Keep your brain healthy. Get rid of the refined sugar.